This is Amateur Survival. I'm Darin Cardin. I'm a novice survivalist going on an overnight simulated survival trip. This time I'm in the desert of southern Montana. I'll be testing out survival techniques I've seen on TV and the internet. I'm gonna put these techniques to the test and see if a normal person with no formal training can use them effectively. Montana is the fourth largest state in the US, over 600 miles from east to west. I'll be hiking in an area close to the Wyoming border. Much of the state of Montana is uninhabited. With the exception of Alaska and Wyoming, Montana has a lower population density than any other state in the US. A deep canyon runs through the area. Known as Bighorn Canyon, it's a vertical drop of up to 1,000 feet. Water flows at the bottom of this canyon. The only problem is getting to it. Animals are hard to come by, but the area does support horses, as well as rattlesnakes and even sheep. I'll be here with no food, no water, and limited supplies. Alright, let's talk about the supplies I've got. I've got my knife. I've got a piece of plastic. I've been using it to keep my cameras dry, but I think that I might have another use for it coming up. And I have an emergency blanket. There's somewhat of a misconception that a desert is a death zone, brutally hot, void of life. This is not always the case, and it depends on the elevation. Lowland deserts like Death Valley do tend to be very hot, but there also exists highland deserts. These deserts are higher in elevation and tend to be much cooler. They are arid locations, but they support more life than the lowland. This area of Montana is a higher elevation desert. It's springtime right now, and the temperature is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty comfortable. There's a number of plants around, specifically cactuses and juniper shrubs. I even see some clouds building overhead. It looks like it may rain. So it just started to rain, and what I would like to do is catch some of this water. So I have a bag with me that I was using to keep my camera gear dry. I'm actually going to put this on the ground and try to catch rainwater with it. We'll see how it works. Let's see what we got. And keep in mind, it didn't rain very hard, and it only rained for a couple minutes. So you can't expect too much. So it's really not even a mouthful, but if I had used my emergency blanket instead of this, because my emergency blanket is much bigger, if I had used that, you know, this could have been a couple mouthfuls maybe. Desert temperatures can be very hot during the day. Surprisingly, they can be very cold during the night. One of the best ways to avoid heat loss is to not sleep directly on the ground. Sleeping on the cold ground will make you cold too. This happens because of conduction. It's a simple concept. If you touch something that's cold, that cold will transfer to your body. Before I lay down, I'm going to cover the ground below me with a layer of juniper bark. Most of the little trees out here are juniper trees. Juniper bark is very useful. In fact, the natives used it for ropes, baskets, tinder for fire. I used it for bedding. And you can see here, it's important that the material you use for insulation contains a lot of air pockets. This trapped air is the reason for the high insulation value. Materials like wool, feathers, and styrofoam all have lots of trapped air. This is the reason why they're chosen for insulation. It insulates you from the ground a little bit, so it keeps you a little bit warmer. My pile of broken up juniper bark also contains a lot of trapped air, so it should offer good insulation against the ground.
Sun's gonna be going down any second. I'm set up pretty good. I'm inside that thicket. It protects against the wind. We got the emergency blanket as a cover if need be. We should be fine. Should be a good night.
As you know, I've been seeing a lot of those cactuses around here. The thing is, they're edible. They're very hard to get at because they've got all those spines, but
The prickly pear cactus has two types of needles. The first are inch-long spines that cover the pads. They're extremely strong and sharp. As bad as these are, there exists another type of needle which is just as bad, perhaps even worse. The cactus is covered in tiny hair-like needles called glaucids. These things break off on contact with your body and become embedded in your skin. If you're unfortunate enough to eat them, your throat will itch for days.
I guess you can chop these pads off and then cut the spines off, and then you can actually eat these things.
If you can clean off the needles, the pads are edible and quite tasty. The sugar content is roughly equal to a banana.
Spines, they're these tiny ones, they're like hair-like, and if you eat those things, you're gonna know about it. So you got to be careful, but I mean, they're quite juicy on the inside.
The prickly pear cactus grows in abundance in this area. Like all cactuses, they're native to only North and South America. All cactuses in the world originate from these two locations.
It really doesn't taste that bad.
I've reached Bighorn Canyon. It's a spectacular view. Canyons are formed from flowing water. Over time, the water wears away at the rock, creating an ever-deepening groove in the ground. This is a very slow process and occurs over millions of years. Getting to the water at the bottom is out of the question. However, you may be able to find a stream that feeds into the canyon. The fact that this is a highland desert means that rain is more common, and when you have rain, you have streams.
I wanted to show you something I saw as I'm walking. Take a look at the ground behind me. Very heavy green right in this area. And actually, as you get closer, you can start to hear the sound of water, running water. So if you are looking for water, this is definitely the place to go. In fact, this is definitely water over here. And I've actually seen a number of experts say that on the show, that, you know, the greener the surroundings, the more likely you have of finding water.
All right, we're heading out. Surprisingly, this was one of the easiest trips I've ever had, and I think it comes down to the fact that this was a highland desert. If you know which ones are edible, cactuses can offer a nearly unlimited supply of food. Water wasn't too hard to find, and the temperature wasn't too hot. I'm happy to be leaving, but if I were stranded here for days or even weeks, I think I could make it.
All right, there's the road. We made it out.